Now we actually get into resumes. Can you believe that? So you have to develop your personal brand. You have to be clear about what kind of job you're applying for and how you bridge the gap between those things before you actually update your resume. So the first step to writing a resume is not opening the Word document and just starting to work on your formatting. It's actually developing and knowing what your personal brand is so that the content that you're putting in your resume will portray the skills that you have to offer. Last week I was working with, she's applying to be a vice president of a company, so a very senior executive, and she had a one-page resume. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on here, because when I first spoke to her, she was telling me all these amazing things she's done, but then I look at the resume and none of it is there. And so our resume really is our story. It's just a snapshot of your career, but it should portray the skills that you have to offer. And we'll talk about one-page resumes shortly. So, contact information. I'll start from the very top of your resume. Usually your contact information goes at the top. Name, phone number, a professional email address. I remember I was looking at an old resume that I had and my email address was babygirllisa@hotmail.com. I was just like, I can't believe I actually did that, but I did. And so please, professional email address, first name, last name @gmail.com tends to work fine, or whatever, you know, but keep it professional. Personalized LinkedIn profile. On LinkedIn, you can personalize your LinkedIn profile URL. So what that means is basically, by default, your LinkedIn profile URL is your name and a bunch of numbers. And it often takes space on your resume, and it doesn't look very nice also. So you can personalize it, making it your first name and last name. It helps when people are also searching for you to find you easier. If you have a website or a portfolio, you want to add that at the top of your resume, and then your city and province. So we no longer include full addresses on your resume. This was very common practice, especially back in the day when you were sending your resume by mail or you were actually going to an office to bring your resume to them. But now that you're applying for roles mostly online, it's not necessary. And there are so many scams happening right now in terms of job searching, so you also want to be careful the amount of personal identifiers that you're putting on your resume. So here is an example of what that can look like. So just name, phone number, email address, LinkedIn, the position they're applying for, and that is the very top of their resume. So, value proposition. We talked about this earlier, about how to develop your value proposition, and I want to give you an example here. This is an example of a human resource manager. So, target position and industry, they're a human resource manager in healthcare. And then a word that describes them, we have enterprising. We then have an action verb that describes how they help the company, they direct planning and policy, and they also are involved in talent management. And then a significant achievement is that they were able to have an achievement in talent retention. I want to ask you another question. How many here have used ChatGPT? Okay, about half of the room. So I think most of you, if you haven't used it, you do know what it is. So it's an artificial intelligence tool. The difference with this one is that it's supposed to be more conversational, so it's like a chat box, and based on what you're prompting it, it learns more about you and it improves over time. So I'm someone that if something is going to help me save time, I'm going to use it. So the thing with ChatGPT though is you have to be specific. The more specific you are, the better you're going to get in what it's going to give you. You can always go the traditional route. Usually when I do this workshop, this is the time I tell people, okay, let's get together. Now write your value proposition based on this 4-point framework. But now we have ChatGPT. And so here's an example of how I use this 4-point framework to develop your resume summary within seconds using ChatGPT. So I said, write a resume summary of qualification that includes these 4 components. If I had just said, write a resume summary for a human resource manager, it would have given me something extremely generic that any human resource manager could use. But now I know the framework and I'm prompting it based on this framework. And so it now provides me with the text of the summary of qualifications. This is a little long for a resume, but what you can do now is you already have a good foundation. All you're doing now is taking the information, editing, and making sure that it sounds like you. So this is a tool that can help you save a lot of time in developing your resume. Another disclaimer that I will give, because I've seen a lot of people do this on social media, they take a job poster and they paste it into ChatGPT and say, write a resume based on this job poster. It'll write a resume for you, but it's going to be the most generic resume that no one is ultimately going to read. So you want your resume to be based on your story. You want your resume to be specific to you. So what I recommend if you're using ChatGPT to develop your resume is that you go by section. If you really focus on each section of the resume, it's important that you understand it for yourself as well, right? So that's why I'm sharing with you these frameworks. The frameworks are in your workbook, so you already have the foundation. You know what the section of your resume is supposed to do. All this is helping you with now is the writing portion. So a great tool that you can use, and again, it's not the only one. There are so many tools out there that can help you develop your resume, but I always say use your judgment, right? That's ultimately what you have to do because you still have to add your voice to it. So skills and core competencies. This is the section that it's not always needed, but it usually goes right under your summary of qualifications. And people sometimes just put a bunch of words there. There's just a lot of words happening. And it can look something like this. So these are some examples of what a core competency section can look like on your resume. Those are not just words. The words that you put there or the keywords that you put there need to be relevant to your background, and you need to detail them in the resume. So if you're saying that relationship building is a skill that you have, somewhere in your experience, in the narrative, you need to provide some context about how you have the skill to build relationships. And so you always want to make sure that you're telling a story of your accomplishments. And that section, again, is also very helpful because most of the time when you're applying for a position online, it's going through a system called an applicant tracking system that has already been set to look for certain keywords in your resume based on the job poster. And so having a section like this is a great way to get more keywords in your resume, but it shouldn't be random. And then we get into your professional experience. In terms of your professional experience, you can have an opening paragraph that talks about the context. So this is where you worked and the relevant tasks that you had. But what goes in your bullets is actually your accomplishments. So, you know, those stories that I was telling you that it would be great to take the time to develop your career stories and actually outline the accomplishments that you had, this is where it goes. It goes in your professional experience in the bullet statements. And so what you really want to do with this section is you want to be able to convey the achievements that you've had that are relevant to the job in question. Google has a model that they call the XYZ model, and how they frame it is accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. But what that ultimately has in the framework is that your statements have to start with an action verb, they have to have an accomplishment, and they have to have an outcome. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the end is often the result. So what happened? But we've all watched movies that sometimes the end comes before the beginning. And that happens sometimes, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it was the ending, it came first. That's how you get an even stronger resume, by putting your result before the actions that you did and then speaking about the accomplishments. So that's a trick that you can do to be able to take your resume to the next level, basically. So types of accomplishments that you can consider. How did you help the company save money? How did you help them make money? How did you help them save time? How did you make work easier? Did you solve a problem? Did you help them be more competitive? Did you build relationships, expand business, attract new clients, retain existing clients? These are all some of the achievements that you can think about. The 14 questions in your workbook are based on some of these types of accomplishments. And again, ChatGPT can help you because you've already taken the time to write your career story. So now what you can do is create a short resume bullet based on this accomplishment. Copy paste the story that you've just developed, and it can help you develop a resume bullet. Again, using your judgment because you still need to edit it so that it flows with your whole document, but it gives you a good foundation. So this is what it can look like in the resume. When I was saying to bring the result first, so this one says grew annual premium account from 550K to 7 million in 5 years. So that's bring the result first before you speak of how you did it. And so this is an example of how that section in your resume can look. Your education. So name of your degree, the institution, specialization, location. The year of completion, it depends. I'll say it's optional. Ageism is real, and it is something that happens. I work with a lot of executives, and we tend to not put the year of completion for that reason. So I'll say that it really depends on you. If you want to put it, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. And then if you have any professional certifications that are relevant, you want to add that as well. If you're someone who has little experience, you're just starting off in the job market, you may want to consider putting your education at the top of your resume. The reason for that is just think of it. If you're opening a Word document, what you see is the first half of the first page. So that's where you want to put the most important information. And that's why you put your value proposition there. That's why you put your summary of qualifications there, because you want to put what really stands out about you there. If the hottest thing that you have right now to offer is your degree, then yes, that's why you put it at the top. But as you acquire experience in the field and you get more years of experience, your education will start going to the bottom of your resume, and you'll put your experience before your education. So resume formatting, layout tips. I do want to give a disclaimer that these are not rules for resume writing, that they are just principles that you can follow, because it depends. Sometimes in the job poster, they'll tell you how they want you to frame the resume. But one thing is that you don't want your margins to be too small. A lot of people will squeeze the margins and make them tiny because they're trying to fit everything into one page. So I was talking about that one-page resume. And there are certain companies that only want a one-page resume. So it's important to read the job poster, but it's not the standard. And so length of your resume can be 1 to 3 pages, especially if you're going higher in your career. It's okay to give a little bit more information. There is a distinction that we make between a resume and a CV. A CV, the word is curriculum vitae, and it basically means my life story. If you look at a professor's resume, it's very long, often like 40 pages. They have all their publications, everywhere they've spoken. That's not what the standard professional needs in terms of a resume. So 1 to 3 pages should be awesome for you to really articulate the skills that you have to offer. File type, Word document, PDF. Avoid any image type of resume, no JPEG, no PNG resumes. Your bullets, you want to have about 6 is like the maximum where you're starting to push it in terms of the accomplishments. And then fonts tends to be 10 to 12, and then I recommend some fonts that are often used for resumes. Other sections to consider on your resume: volunteer experience, especially if you have some relevant volunteer experience, you want to include that. Any additional professional experience. What that means is that you may have experience that is not totally connected to this job, but you acquired some skills that would be helpful to mention. After your professional experience, you can add a section called additional professional experience and talk about that experience. And then if you have any projects, awards, publications. So always think of what is relevant to my personal brand and what is relevant to my employment target. All right, so any questions? Yes. Okay, so that can be like a portfolio, or if you have like some people who are more in the academic field, maybe they have some publications that are on a certain page. So yes, you can include that at the very top of your resume, close to your contact information. But you can also add it at the very bottom of your resume as projects and outline it there. But the best place for that would be your LinkedIn profile, because on your LinkedIn profile, you can add a visual to it. It goes way beyond just adding a link that says special projects or portfolio. You can actually outline some of the portfolios, some of the projects in your portfolio, actually add images and start detailing them a lot more to bring your LinkedIn profile to life.